వెల్కమ్ బ్యాక్ టు అవర్ ఛానల్. ఇవాళ మనం కేప్ కోస్ట్ క్యాస్టిల్కి వచ్చాం అన్నమాట. అది మన ప్లేస్ నుంచి ఆక్రా నుంచి ఇక్కడికి 150 కిలోమీటర్స్ దూరంలో ఉంటుంది. కేప్ కోస్ట్ అంటారు, ఆ ఏరియాలో ఉంటుంది అనమాట. ఇక్కడ ఏంటంటే స్లేవ్ ట్రేడింగ్ జరిగేదంట అప్పట్లో బ్రిటిష్ వాళ్ళు ఉన్న కాలంలో. సో ఇక్కడ నుంచి జనాన్ని గ్యాదర్ చేసి వేరే చోటకి వేరే కంట్రీస్కి పనిచేయడానికి పంపించేవాళ్ళంట. సో అది ఎలా జరిగేది ఏంటి ప్రొసీజర్ అంతా మనకి గైడ్ వచ్చి ఇప్పుడు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తారు. సో మీరు కూడా నాతో పాటు చూసేయండి, ఓకేనా?
ట్రేడింగ్కి మనుషుల్ని తీసుకుని వచ్చి ఇక్కడ పెట్టేవాళ్ళంటండి. ఒక నెంబర్ అయినాక షిప్ ఫుల్ అవుతుంది అనుకున్నప్పుడు ట్రేడింగ్కి వేరే కంట్రీకి పంపేవాళ్ళు అనమాట. ఆ కంట్రీ నుంచి వీళ్ళకి కావాల్సినవి తెచ్చుకునేవాళ్ళు.
ఇదేనండి, మనకి ఇంకా క్లియర్గా వచ్చి ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తారు. కాకపోతే ఊరికినే ఇప్పుడు అవుట్లుక్ చూపిస్తున్నాను అనమాట. ఇలా సముద్రం అంతా కనిపిస్తుంది, ఈ క్యాస్టిల్ పక్కనే ఉంటుంది. వీటిని పిరంగులు అంటాం కదండి, అవన్నమాట. ఎన్ని ఉన్నాయో చూసారా? ఇవి గుళ్ళు కూడా ఇటే ఉంచారు, అంటే బుల్లెట్స్ అన్నమాట. ఇదేమో పగిలిపోయిన బుల్లెట్. కానీ ఇక్కడ ఉండి ఆ స్లేవ్స్ ట్రేడ్లో చాలా కష్టాలు పడ్డారంటండి. మనం అసలు తెలుసుకుందాం అది ఎలా జరిగింది ఏంటి అన్నీ చెప్తారు. చాలా హెవీగా ఉంది బుల్లెట్, చూసారా? చాలా హెవీ ఉంది. కొంచెమే దాన్ని అట్లే పెడతారనమాట, ఐరన్.
ట్రేడింగ్ ట్రయాంగిల్గా 3 కంట్రీస్ మధ్య జరిగేదండి. అదేంటంటే ఫస్ట్ ఇంగ్లాండ్ నుంచి ఆఫ్రికాకి రమ్ అండ్ గూడ్స్ వచ్చాయంట. అప్పుడు ఆఫ్రికన్స్ స్లేవ్స్ కింద అమెరికాకి పంపేవాళ్ళంట. అమెరికా నుంచి షుగరు కాఫీ అప్పుడు ఇంగ్లాండ్కి వెళ్ళేదంట. అంటే ఇది 3 కంట్రీస్ మధ్యలో ట్రేడింగ్ జరిగేది. మనుషుల్ని ట్రేడింగ్ కింద వాడుకునేవాళ్ళు అనమాట. కానీ అండి ఆ మనుషుల్ని రూమ్స్లో పెట్టి చాలా టార్చర్ పెట్టారంటండి. నాకైతే ఆ స్టోరీ వింటుంటే చాలా బాధేసింది. మీరు కూడా వినండి, లాస్ట్ వరకు ఈ వీడియోని స్కిప్ చేయకుండా చూడండి. చాలా ఇంట్రెస్టింగ్ విషయాలు తెలుస్తాయి.
ఇక్కడ నుంచే పంపించేవాళ్ళంట. ఒక నేమ్ కూడా ఉండేదంట, నో రిటర్న్ ఆఫ్ డోర్ అని. సో వన్స్ ఒకసారి ఎంటర్ అయ్యారంటే ఇంకా మళ్ళీ జీవితంలో వాళ్ళు బ్యాక్కి వెళ్ళేది లేదనమాట. ఇంకా చచ్చిపోయినా బ్రతికినా ఉన్నా ఇక్కడే, అంటే ఇక్కడ నుంచి ట్రేడింగ్ జరిగితే ఆ కంట్రీలో, లేదంటే ఇక్కడ చచ్చిపోతే ఇక్కడేనమాట. ఇక్కడే సముద్రంలో వదిలేసేవాళ్ళంట. అవన్నీ రూమ్స్. ఇవి కూడా ఇక్కడ లైట్స్ కానీ ఏవి ఉండవంటండి. ఓన్లీ చిన్న హోల్ ఉంటుంది, ఆ హోల్లో నుంచే లైట్గా గాలి వెళ్తురు అంతే. లైట్లు కానీ ఏమీ లేవు. ఫుడ్ కూడా లిమిటెడ్గా పెట్టేవాళ్ళంట. అండ్ ప్రెగ్నెన్సీ వచ్చినా కూడా ఎలా చేయరు కదా.
మన గైడ్ వచ్చేసాడండి, ఈయనండి ఆయన మాటల్లోనే. తను ఇంగ్లీష్లో ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తాడు. సో నేను తెలుగులో మధ్యలో ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తాను, ఓకేనా?
Good morning to you. I officially welcome you all to the historical Keta castle. My name is Harry and I'll be your guide. The tour will take us about 45 minutes. But before we begin with the tour of the castle, I'm going to give you a brief history about the castles we have in Ghana and in the transatlantic slave trade in the west coast of Africa. And so basically in Ghana there are 3 castles dotted along the coast of Ghana. We have St. George's Castle in Elimina, built by the Portuguese in 1482. We also have the Christianborg Castle in Osu, Accra, built by the Danes in 1661. Finally, we have Cape Coast Castle, built by the British in 1665. Out of these 3 castles, Elmina Castle or the St. George's Castle, it is the biggest and the oldest European structure in tropical West Africa. Cape Coast Castle, where we are at the moment, it is the smallest among the 3. However, slavery in Africa, it all started at a time when the Spaniards got to what they call the New World. Upon getting to the New World, gold and silver mines were opened, sugar, tobacco, cotton plantations were established. In as much they wanted the wealth from the New World, they were not prepared to do the hard labor. They subjected the natives to do the hard labor. Due to European diseases, the natives were not surviving. They needed to get people to replace the natives. And so one Catholic missionary by name Bartholomew de las Cascas, he suggested that blacks taken from Africa should be made to work in the plantations. In his opinion, he said Africans, they were doing the same work under similar climatic condition in Africa, and then also Africans are much stronger. For that reason, blacks should be allowed to work in the plantations. Somewhere around 1512, they took a couple of black people from Spain to Hispaniola, others also says to Haiti. That is where they were tested on the plantations, and then true to Bartholomew de las Cascas' claim, they all proved to be physically strong, which made the demand for black people rise, and this began the unfortunate misery and pain of black people, the forced exodus of Africans and blacks from their motherland to the world unknown. The trade wasn't in Ghana only. The whole of West Africa, from wherever that these enslaved Africans were taken from Africa, they would have to walk barefooted to the castles. Before they were brought down to the castles, they were first of all taken to Asan slave market. That is where these enslaved Africans took their last African bath. So meaning inside a castle, the captive never took their bath while they were inside a castle. From Asan, others came in here. Others too might continue the journey to the Elmina Castle. It all depends on who went there to buy who. If it is a British, they move down to this castle. If it is a Portuguese, they continue the journey to the Elmina Castle. But then, just inside the castle, the captives were being branded with branding irons. Why were they being branded? It is because different slave companies were buying the captives. These companies wanted to identify whoever they were going to be bought. They introduced branding irons. A branding iron, it is just a metal. On top of the metal, the slave company has its name or probably has a company's logo on top of the metal. All they would have to do is to insert the metal stick into fire to get very hot. Once they pick the stick from the fire, they place it straight on their chest, at their arm or at their back for easy identification. The branding alone was even enough to kill them. After that has been done, they were then separated. The men were kept down here, whilst the women were also kept in the female slave dungeon. But why in the dungeons? In the dungeons because these dungeons served as a transit point for the captive. They need to stay down here from 2 weeks to 3 months, depending on when the slave ships will get to the coast. Once the slave ship gets to the coast, they would have to transport all the captives to the Americas and the Caribbeans. The likes of Jamaica, Brazil, Argentina, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Haiti, Suriname, New York, Virginia. Only few others were taken to Europe. Over there, they auctioned the captives, sold them out to plantation owners for them to work in their newfound plantations. The trade officially ended in England in 1807, but in those of the British inside this very castle, they refused to end the trade in 1807. They rather continued with the trade till 1833, which was finally abolished in here. The trade lasted for more than 400 years, more than 4 centuries.
చాలా అంటే గొప్పలా ఉంది మొత్తం ఇప్పుడు కనిపించడానికి
Captured enslaved African men were held. This very dangerous for a period of time. They were not allowed to move outside. They defecated, urinated, vomited. They sat and slept around their own mess. But then the whole idea wasn't meant for them to ease themselves on the ground, but rather they used to have wooden buckets or receptacles just at the corners for them to ease themselves. But because they were not gets full, they were left with no option to ease themselves on the ground. They slept on a bare floor. Others were sleeping on top of the others. That is the only source of light and ventilation for the captives. But sometimes when it rains, depending on the direction of the wind, some of the rainwater comes into the dungeon. There was nothing like light as you see now. The whole place was very dark. Because they were held in darkness for a very long time, whenever they had the opportunity to step outside, the sun rays affected their eye. Many of them became partially blind whenever they were exposed to the sun. Because they had to defecate, urinate, do all sort of things in here, the end result was malaria, diarrhea, fever, dysentery. By the time the slave ships would be ready for them to move, many of them lost their lives in this very danger. In 1974, some students from the University of Ghana, from the archaeological department, they came in here to conduct a research work. When they got in here, they wanted to understand the reason why the floor it is as solid as it is now. So they decided to pick a sample, they took it to the lab, conducted several research on it, and after several research being done, the result of the findings that came out was that what you see on the ground now contains human feces, blood, vomit, leftover food, saliva, urine, tears that has been mixed up together, which it has solidified and then turned into blood as you see on the ground now. So what you see on the ground now, that is not the original floor of the dungeon. No, the original floor of the dungeon itself, it has been covered with the remains of the captives. So what you are seeing now is not the original floor of the dungeon. Let's organize.
చూసారా ఇవి ఒక రీసెర్చ్ జరిగినప్పుడు బ్లడ్ ఫీసెస్ అన్నీ కలిపి ఉన్నాయంట. ఒకళ్ళు రీసెర్చ్ చేసినప్పుడు తెలిసింది. ఫ్లోర్ అసలు యాక్చువల్గా ఇలా ఉండేది కాదంట, కానీ ఈ హోల్స్ పడింది అయితే వాళ్ళ టీయర్స్, బ్లడ్, సలైవా, ఫీసెస్ అన్నీ కలిసి ఇలాగా ఫ్లోర్ కింద పడేదంట. అండ్ ఇక్కడ గాలి కూడా వేయకుండా ఓన్లీ లైటే, ఈ లైట్లు ఉరికిన ఇప్పుడు పెట్టారు, ఇదివరకు అయితే లైట్లు కూడా లేవంట. చూసారా ఇవన్నీ రూమ్స్ కూడా అదే.
Because of this open space here, from this very point, not everyone will continue the journey from this point. From this point, they need to separate the weaker ones from the stronger ones. The weaker ones will be held in this room for doctors or physicians in the castle to examine them. Only the stronger ones will have to continue with the journey. After the sorting has been done, the stronger ones wouldn't move back towards the main entrance. No, they will exit the dungeon through an underground passage. Behind this very wall, there was an underground passage, very big and very wide, about 70 meters from this point. Only the stronger ones will have to make their way through the tunnel. They walk through till they get to the door of no return, where the women can join them. They all move straight into the ships. The tunnel itself has been blocked by the British in 1833. We cannot move through this tunnel. However, when we continue the tour outside, we'll get the opportunity to see how big the tunnel is, where exactly the tunnel ends. But from this point, I'm sorry we can't go through from this point. These are flowers or wreaths also in here. These are brought in here by Africans, African Americans, people from the Caribbean. They brought them in here to pay homage to their ancestors, to our brothers and sisters who lost their lives during the trade. They mostly bring these flowers in here during Pan-African Historical Theatre Festival, Panafest, or Emancipation Day. That is when these are normally brought in here. And in 2019, Ghana celebrated the year of return, of which many of these were brought in here by our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. But finally, this is a shrine, African traditional temple. In the olden days, before the Europeans had not introduced Christianity to Africans, nor the Arabs had not introduced Islam to Africans, we as Africans we had our own way of communicating to the Supreme Being. We communicate to the Supreme Being through natural things like stones, rivers, mountains, trees. It is our belief that once we pray or worship through some of these natural phenomena, our petitions will get to the ancestral world. The ancestors, together with the deities, will carry our petitions to the Supreme Being. We as Africans believe that the ancestors and the deities are more closer to God than any other person. That was the mode of worshiping in Africa. In Cape Coast here, we have 77 of such shrines in the town. This very one you see over here, this very shrine was on this very land before this whole edifice was built. After the Europeans succeeded in acquiring the land from the chiefs, they were denying the local people from worshiping from this side. They performed a sacrifice. They took the shrine from here to another place. It was brought back when the trade ended. So all that I'm trying to put across is that when the captives were in here, this wasn't here. This was only brought back when the trade ended in the castle. However, it is still an active shrine for the indigenous people in the town. The name of the deity is called Nana Taber. Nana Taber, that is the name of the deity. Any questions?
నాన్న చేయి పట్టుకో. చూసారా, అసలు ఇంకా ఈ చిన్న హోల్స్లో నుంచి తప్ప ఇంకా గాలి వెలుతురు ఏమీ లేదు. వాళ్ళు చచ్చిపోయే వరకు ఇక్కడే ఉండాలి. ఇటు నుంచి డోర్ ఉంటుందంట, అది కూడా స్ట్రాంగ్గా ఉన్న వాళ్ళే వెళ్తారు. ఇంకా స్ట్రాంగ్గా లేని వాళ్ళు ఇక్కడే ఉండిపోతారు. ఎందుకంటే వాళ్ళకి స్ట్రాంగ్గా ఉన్న వాళ్ళే కావాలి. అక్కడ
that is William and Thomas. The three coastal boys had the opportunity to travel to England, study and become missionaries. It was so unfortunate in England, the two boys lost their lives in England. Philip studied in England alone. He was the first African to be ordained as an Anglican priest in England. Later returned back to the castle. He worked in here as a reverend minister and then also succeeded in establishing the castle schools for the mulattoes. Philip died on 17th of October 1816. We just came out from the male dungeon, but just above the dungeon we have 3 windows above the dungeon. It was a church, the first English church or the first Anglican church, also known as a society for the propagation of the gospel. A church sitting just above the male dungeon. So while there were others up here claiming they were worshiping God, singing praises to God, preaching love your neighbor as yourself, just right beneath them there were others in the dungeons dying and suffering. The big question we need to ask ourselves is that why should they even build a church on top of a slave dungeon? But the remaining 3 this way, these are European graves. Please let me close it. Alright, so the remaining 3 this way, these are European graves. The very first one up there, he was an army commander in a castle by name C.B. Whitehead. C.B. Whitehead died in 1812. Cause of death was unknown. We don't know what exactly killed C.B. Whitehead. But then the third one this way, that is Captain George Maclean. Maclean was a Scottish, born on 24th February 1801, appointed as a governor in 1830. It was Maclean who ensured the closure of the tunnel in 1833 when the trade ended in the castle. He also succeeded in bringing the Fantis and the Ashantis together to sign a peace agreement not to fight again. Maclean still went ahead to establish the first English court of justice in the country. The idea behind the court was to settle disputes among the local people when the trade ended in the castle. But then that does not mean that we as Africans, we never had our own way of settling our disputes. The court started up here. The door opened up there with a sign, Maclean's Hall. That is where the court was established. Maclean died in 1847. Then the last one in the middle, a lady by name Letitia Elizabeth London, Captain George Maclean's wife. Letitia traveled all the way from England to this castle in 1838 only to visit the husband. But 2 months after she made it to the castle, she was found dead in the husband's bedroom, holding a bottle. Nobody knew what exactly killed Letitia, but then rumors, gossips in the town had it that when Letitia made it to the castle, she herself realized McLean was having an African mistress by name Ellen Bannerman. And so out of jealousy, out of frustration, she decided to poison herself. Others also believe that Ellen Bannerman came in here, she posed herself to be a servant in the castle, later conspired with McLean, and then together they poisoned Letitia. And so as I speak with you now, nobody can really tell what exactly killed Letitia. The fact that she was found dead, she was holding a bottle, the bottle contains an acid. It could be that she was poisoned by someone, or she decided to poison herself out of jealousy and in frustration. She died in 1838, just 2 months after she made it to the castle. Alright, so like I said earlier, the underground tunnel, it has been blocked. For that reason, we can't go through the tunnel. But from where we have the shrine, that is the entrance to the tunnel. This side was only serving as an observatory. From here, you see the end of the tunnel. This was serving as an observatory. A soldier needs to be out here with a gun. All he does is to make sure everyone moves down into the ship. So from here, we'll see the end. But please remember, nobody entered the tunnel from this side. Nobody came up from this side. This only served as an observatory. If you want to have a look at it, you can do so, but just be careful, there is no stairs in here. Be careful you don't fall.
ఇక్కడ పెట్టేవాళ్ళ
కాదు, ఇక్కడ ఒక పోలీస్ మ్యాన్ చెక్ చేయడానికి. ఇది ఎంట్రన్స్ కాదు, ఇక్కడ నుంచి అబ్జర్వ్
చేయడానికి ఈ హోల్ లో నుంచి.
Okay, so like I said, the tunnel has been blocked. That is the end of the tunnel. It has been blocked from this side as well. So all the men would have to walk through till they get to this very point. Once they get in here, they will still have to use this very door. They turn to the right, they walk straight down there. That is the door of no return. Very soon we'll get there and I'll explain to you why it is called the door of no return. But this side was the end of the passage. But for now, let's see another step on this side.
ఇక్కడ నుంచి ఇది ఎండ్ అంట, ఇది క్లోజ్ చేస్తారండి టనల్.
Left Europe for Africa. They never came to Africa with their wives. And so whenever there was a desire for them to have sex, they were left with no option to abuse and enslave African women. Those of the women who resisted rape from the officials in the castle, they were beaten up severely and then later locked in here for a couple of days. A very huge metal gate covering the side. Food and water was only given to them through the side. There is an open space in here, that is where they had to defecate and urinate. So those of the women who resisted rape from the officials, they were the ones locked in here. So please, you can have a look at it if you want to do so.
ఇది సెల్ అంట, జైలు. ఇక్కడ జైల్లో పెట్టేవాళ్ళు. పెట్టి ఇక్కడ చాలా స్ట్రాంగ్గా ఉండేదంట తలుపు. ఫుడ్ అది ఇక్కడ హోల్ ఉంది. ఫుడ్ వాటర్ ఇక్కడే ఇచ్చేవాళ్ళంట, అది కూడా రోజుకు ఒకసారి ఇక్కడ నుంచి ఇచ్చేవాళ్ళు. అక్కడ ఒక చిన్న హోల్ ఉంది. మనం మినిట్స్ చూసాం కదండి, మేము స్లేవ్స్, ఇది ఫీమేల్స్ బ్యాంగిల్స్. ఇది కూడా క్లోజ్గా ఉంటుంది.
Come, let's go.
వెళ్ళమ్మా.
Alright, so that is the female slave station. Two separate chambers for the women. This side is the very first chamber. We have the second chamber just opposite us. Each chamber held 150 women together with their children in here. They were also not allowed to move outside. They defecated, urinated, vomited, had their menstruation in here. They sat and slept around their own mess. The drills are here. That is the only source of light and ventilation for the women. Whenever the governor wants to rape any of the women in here, the governor comes with a servant. They stand right in front of the door. The governor looks through and points at any of them. The servant comes in and then pick her out. She'll be taken to another place where she'll be given good food to eat, put on nice attire, take a nice bath. From there, she'll be handed over to the governor. After the governor is done abusing her, she'll be brought in here back again. But as time goes on, if they realize she's pregnant, they will still have to come for her. The British had stone houses within the community. That is where these pregnant women were taken to. 3 months after delivery, the governor or the officials in the castle would have to take the baby. The woman then returned back in here again. But then those of the women who were not fortunate, but rather found pregnant crossing the Atlantic Ocean, they were all dumped into the ocean. Any questions? From the side and it came back into the castle again. Enslaved Africans who went through this door lost contact with Africa. They lost their names, they lost their identity. Once the door wasn't big as you see. Whenever you get the opportunity to visit the Elmina Castle, you will see the original door of no return. Very, very short, very narrow at the Elmina Castle. Remember, not everyone who went through this door survived the journey. From wherever the deeds and food and water, others fell into traps. Others were attacked by wild animals. Those of them who were found sick and weak, they were left on the way to the castle. Only few people made it to the castle. The few who got to the castle alive. Once again, the conditions in the dungeons, it wasn't the best. So many died in the dungeons. Those who survived the dungeons came out here. They had to go through this door. They went through the door. They saw the ships. They saw the Atlantic Ocean. They never had an idea as to what was going, where they were taking them. So some of them preferred to commit suicide on the Atlantic Ocean rather to be taken to unknown destination. Many people lost their lives when they went through this side. But then when you step outside of this door, we have the door of return. Why the door of return? 1998, Ghana celebrated Emancipation Day for the very first time. 2 bones of 2 enslaved Africans were exhumed from New York and in Jamaica. That is Samuel Carson and Madam Krista. The 2 bones were flown down to Ghana. When you are traveling from Accra to Cape Coast, there is a village along the way called Abanze where you can locate Fort Amsterdam just up on the hill. From Accra to Abanze, they traveled by road. And then from Abanze to this part of the castle, all the crew decided not to travel by road again. They will only continue the journey to the castle through the Atlantic Ocean. But why through the ocean? It is because the ancestors were taken to the Americas through the Atlantic Ocean. If the descendants of the ancestors are returning back home, then there is a need for them to also use the Atlantic Ocean. They got here. A very short but a very impressive ceremony was done just right in front of the door. After the ceremony, the 2 bones were ushered through the door of return. That ceremony was very symbolical. The meaning of that ceremony means that the chains have been broken. And for that matter, our brothers and sisters in the diaspora should return back to the continent again. Let us not forget, the black Americans, they are not white people, they are not from America. They are all from Africa. It is because of the injustice that occurred in here. That is how come today they find themselves in the Americas and the Caribbean. So the door of return is to invite our brothers or bring back our brothers and sisters back to the continent. Again, later, the two bones, they were reburied at Asana Manson slave market, where the captives took their last African bath. So let us step out here. Let's see what is out here.
ఇక్కడ నుంచి అది డోర్ ఆఫ్ నో రిటర్న్ అంటండి. ఆ డోర్ ఆఫ్ నో రిటర్న్ అంటే ఏంటంటే ఇటు నుంచి బయటకు ఒకసారి వెళ్తే ఇంక తిరిగి రావడం లేదు. చనిపోతే పసిఫిక్ ఓషన్లో చచ్చిపోయే వాళ్ళు పడేసేవాళ్ళంట.
All the captives would have to move out here. Once they move out here, the ships were already parked over here. But if not for the stones or the rocks it has been arranged over here, the sea comes closer. So the bigger ships will not dock very close to this side, but the bigger ships would have to dock 70 to 100 meters away from this side. They convey the captives with smaller boats to the bigger ones, and then the journey continues from that very point. But on this side is a fishing community for the indigenous people in the town. So the door of return, that is what I just explained in there.
డోర్ ఆఫ్ నో రిటర్న్ అని ఇదివరకు ఉంది కదండి, ఆ తర్వాత డోర్ ఆఫ్ రిటర్న్ అని పెట్టారంట. అది ఆ డోర్ ఆఫ్ రిటర్న్ అంటే ఏంటంటే ఇప్పుడు వేరే చోట్లకి పంపించేశారు కదా, అమెరికా అటు సైడ్ ఉన్నారు కదా ఈ ఆఫ్రికన్స్, సో వాళ్ళని ఇన్వైట్ చేస్తూ డోర్ ఆఫ్ రిటర్న్ అని పెట్టారు. సో ఎవరైతే రావచ్చో వాళ్ళు రావచ్చు అన్నమాట. అది డోర్ ఆఫ్ నో రిటర్న్ అంటే అటు నుంచి ఒకసారి బయటకు వస్తే ఇంకా వచ్చేది లేదు. బ్రిటిష్ వాళ్ళ టైంలో, పోర్చుగీస్ వాళ్ళు అప్పుడు, ఇప్పుడు డోర్ ఆఫ్ రిటర్న్ అని పెట్టారు. ఇప్పుడు అమెరికాలో అక్కడ ఉంటున్న బ్లాక్ వాళ్ళందరూ ఆఫ్రికాకి సంబంధించిన వాళ్ళే, జమైకన్స్ కానీ అందరూ అని చెప్తున్నారు. ఇవన్నీ రూమ్సేనండి, బోలెడ్ రూమ్స్. వీటిలో ఏంటంటే సిక్ అయిన వాళ్ళు ఒక రూమ్లో, ప్రెగ్నెంట్ వచ్చిన వాళ్ళు ఒక రూమ్లో, అలాగా రూమ్స్ కింద పెట్టి ఉంచేవాళ్ళు.
Alright, so this is a cell as it is clearly written on top. It is not an ordinary cell but a condemned cell. It looks as if the punishment given to the men inside the male dungeon, it wasn't enough. They still went ahead to create a condemned cell. Enslaved African men who fought for their freedom whilst they were in the castle, they were seen to be stubborn, aggressive, rebellious. They were all locked up in this very cell. Nobody went through this side and then came back alive. Less than 72 hours in here, nobody is going to survive in here. Let us move in and I'll explain to you why. Please keep your heads down once you come.
ఇది సెల్ జైలు అనమాట. దీంట్లో ఎంటర్ అయిన వాళ్ళు 72 గంటల కన్నా బతికి బయట వచ్చిన వాళ్ళు లేరంటండి. చూసారా, అసలు దీంట్లో గాలి లేదు, లైట్ లేదు.
Alright, so that is a condemned cell. There were 3 doors leading to this side. The first 2 doors in the middle, it has been taken off. Left to the last one. Even the last one, the door, it is still open. You can still feel the heat in here. So you can imagine all the 3 doors are locked down. No food, no water was given to them. They were still in chains and in shackles, out of suffocation and in starvation. Nobody survives in here. Nobody comes in here and goes back alive because of the conditions that existed in here. Any question, please?
Was this place under the...
No. Okay, please keep your heads down and cross the step.
ఒక్కసారి సెల్లోకి వస్తే బ్రతికి బయటపడిన వాళ్ళు ఎవరు లేరంటండి. అసలు గాలి లేదు, లైట్ లేదు, ఫుడ్ ఉండదంట. ఫుడ్ కూడా ఇచ్చేవాళ్ళు కాదు. కానీ నేను వింటుంటే అండి ఈ స్టోరీ చాలా బాధేస్తుంది. కళ్ళం నీళ్ళు కూడా వస్తున్నాయి చెప్తుంటే. అయ్యో ఇంత బాధపడ్డారా, ఇంత టార్చర్ ఫీల్ అయ్యారా అని. ఇదేదో మెక్లిన్ హాల్ అని. ఇది గవర్నర్స్ బెడ్రూమ్ హాల్. ఇక్కడికి తీసుకుని వచ్చేవాళ్ళ అమ్మాయిల్ని. పెద్ద రూము, అన్ని వైపులా డోర్లు పెట్టుకున్నారు. పాపం వాళ్ళకేమో డోర్లు లేవు, లైట్లు లేవు.
Alright, so this is where the governor was living. Over here, there is nothing important here for us to see, but we just want to compare the difference between this side and in the dungeon. Only one person occupied the side. From the main entrance to the hall to the bedroom, the governor had 16 windows. Please look at the sizes of the windows. For one person, 1,000 men dying and so on.
తెలియడానికి డిఫరెన్స్ కోసం ఇన్ని విండోస్ బిల్ చేయించుకున్నాడు.
No, if that is not coming, you are not coming, right?
చూసారు, రూమ్ అంతా ఏంటంటే స్లేవ్స్కి అయితే
When we
ఇవ్వలేదు
look up on
కదా.
the hill, there is a fort just right above the hill. That is Fort William. The British built Fort William, Fort Victoria to serve as a watchtower for the castle. So whenever there are enemies attacking the castle, whether by land or by sea, those up there will be the first people to see them. They will then have to communicate to the soldiers in here for them to get prepared. They use symbols and objects in communication. So for example, in the morning, if they want to communicate, all they do is to wave a red flag in the morning as a sign of communication. In the afternoon, they use mirror. They turn the surface.
అటు నుంచి ఎంట్రన్స్, ఇటు నుంచి ఎగ్జిట్.
So the whole of this area was known as a Palava Hall. This is where buying and selling of human beings took place. Before anybody at all was taken into the dungeon, the person would first of all have to visit this site for European doctors and nurses to examine and check his or her fitness level. From there, the person would be brought and then taken into the dungeon. Basically, the whole of this area was an auction block. This is where they determine who to buy and who not to buy. But please remember, not everyone who was brought up here was bought. They were brought in here by middlemen. Anybody who wasn't bought from this side, whoever brought him or her here needs to take that person back. The middlemen, they were not willing to do so. They move a bit inland, they abandon them on the way, and then they continue with the journey. And so even if you are not bought from this side, your chances of surviving was still low, because you could be in the forest, you end up eaten up by an animal. The whole of this area was an auction block for the British. Alright, so please, any final questions before we end
ఇది
the talk?
ఆప్షన్
Any final
బ్లాక్
questions?
అంట. ఇక్కడ నర్సెస్ ఉంది, వీళ్ళ ఫిట్నెస్ అది ఎలా ఉంది ఏంటి అని చెక్ చేసేది.
Let us have a moment. Alright, so we're about to end the tour now. But before we bring the tour to an end, the big question we all need to ask ourselves is that the dungeons are empty. The cells are also empty now. Nobody's in the dungeon, nobody's in the cell. But still, the question lies that, is slavery over? No, slavery, it is not over. It is still going on in different ways, in different forms. But please, as you've come here today to learn about this history, let us all go back home, educate our families, our friends about what we've learned today. Let us avoid discrimination. Let's say no to racism. For whatever that occurred in this very castle, it has already happened. There is nothing any of us can do to change the past, but it is for us as individuals to pick lessons from the past. And as we move into the future, together we all make sure such injustice never repeat itself again. Together we all can make the world a better place. And so this is where we end our guided tour of the castle. I wish you all safe journey back home till we meet some other day, some other time. Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the rest of the day.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. ఇది ఒక హాస్పిటల్ క్లినిక్ లాగా అండి. ఇక్కడికి వచ్చినాక వాళ్ళ ఫిట్నెస్ ఎలా ఉంది, స్ట్రాంగ్ పర్సన్స్ని అయితే ఒకవైపుకి, వీక్ పర్సన్స్ని అయితే ఒకవైపుకి, ఏమైనా జబ్బులు ఉన్నాయా అన్నీ ఇక్కడ చెక్ చేసేవాళ్ళంట. అక్కడ చెక్ చేసి అప్పుడు డ్యాంగన్స్లోకి ఫీమేల్ డ్యాంగన్స్, మేల్ డ్యాంగన్స్లోకి తీసుకుని వెళ్ళేవాళ్ళండి. చూసారా, ఇదంతా ఇంత పెద్దది, అన్ని రూమ్స్, ఒక్కొక్క ఇలా షాప్స్ పెట్టేశారు. ఇంకా ఆ రూమ్స్లో ఒక్కొక్క రూమ్లో మేల్స్ డ్యాంగన్లో ఏమో పెద్దది కదండి, అది మొత్తం 5 రూమ్స్ ఉన్నాయి కదా, 1000 మెంబర్స్ నుంచి 1000 మెంబర్స్ దాకా పెట్టేవాళ్ళంట. ఫీమేల్ దాంట్లో కొంచెం చిన్నది కదా, ఫీమేల్ దాంట్లో ఒక 150 మెంబర్స్ పెట్టేవాళ్ళంట. వాళ్ళు ఇంకా అక్కడే ఉండాలి. మేల్స్ డ్యాంగన్ పెద్దది కదా, 5 షెల్స్ ఉన్నాయి. సో 5 షెల్స్లో 1000 మెంబర్స్ పెట్టేవాళ్ళు. అండ్ వాళ్ళు అక్కడే తినడం, అక్కడే తాగడం, అక్కడే అన్నీ, టాయిలెట్కి కానీ, పీసెస్కి కానీ, అన్ని వామిటింగ్స్ ఏది వచ్చినా ఇంకా అక్కడే అండి. ఒక చిన్న హోల్ ఉంటుంది, ఆ హాల్లో నుంచి చూసారా. కానీ చాలా బాధాకరం కదండి, నాకు అయితే చాలా బాధేసింది. ఎంత బాధపడి ఉంటారో, ఎంతమంది చనిపోయి ఉంటారో. చూసారా ఫ్రెండ్స్, ఇదే అనమాట స్లేవ్ ట్రేడ్ జరిగిన ప్లేస్ అండ్ స్లేవ్స్ని పెట్టింది, ఆ డేంజర్స్ అవన్నీ చూసారు కదా. సో మీకు ఎలా అనిపించింది ఫ్రెండ్స్ ఈ వీడియో చూస్తే? నాకైతే చాలా బాధ అనిపించింది. సో మీకు ఎలా అనిపించిందో నాకు కామెంట్ బాక్స్లో కామెంట్ చేయండి. మీకు ఈ వీడియో నచ్చినట్టయితే లైక్ చేయండి, షేర్ చేయండి, సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేయండి. ఇంకా మంచి వీడియోస్తో మీ ముందుకు వస్తాను, ఓకేనా? అండ్ పక్కనే బెల్ ఐకాన్ ఉంటుంది, దాన్ని క్లిక్ చేయండి. సో నేను కొత్త వీడియో అప్లోడ్ చేసినప్పుడు మీకు నోటిఫికేషన్ వస్తుందన్నమాట. ఓకేనా ఫ్రెండ్స్, బాయ్.